it's Courtney here. I'm getting ready to leave the house. I wanted to give a quick little review of a recent book I read, and that is RuPaul's memoir, House of Hidden Meanings. And it was a nice, solid read. I think he has a few other books out, but this is the first one I've ventured into. Now, you know, RuPaul, you know, he created Drag Race.
Start your engines, and may the best drag queen win.
Which is amazing. If you have not seen that show, you definitely need to go check it out, right? Now, his memoir is actually narrated by him, so I definitely suggest you go and check it out. He has some emotions. It's just a good time. It's nice to read a memoir with the author's own voice. I enjoyed that well. Now, I enjoyed the memoir. However, I was expecting him to have more about, you know, Drag Race, his show in it.
Let it all hang out.
And he didn't even mention it, which kind of disappointed me. However, I did realize that, you know, the show not only comes from, you know, drag, the name of the show, but he was very much into cars and is into cars. And I definitely didn't know that. Apparently, when he was younger, his brother-in-law used to pay him to drive cars from one side of the country to another, where, you know, he would sell it and get, you know, more money for it in another different area. So I thought that was really cool. I also found out that RuPaul comes from, you know, a very poor background with a very strong, headstrong mom who was his first audience, which is really cool. And he believed that his dad had like a very victim mentality, which is why he never like progressed in life. And they butted heads because his dad was never really there for him. So that really sucks. And I can definitely relate. But his mom taught him to be very self-reliant. So from an early age, he definitely had that mentality going for him, which served him well because he was bullied a lot and called sissy and whatnot from the neighborhood bullies. And he realized that people outside of him knew who he was and about his sexuality before he can even put a name on it. But it's unfortunate, you know, he had to go through that. I liked how he said that there's different types of gays and they don't always get along and, you know, relate to each other. And I think that's very interesting because people like to put LGBTQ individuals all into one pocket, like, hey, we all relate, we're all the same thing. And he said he definitely was not that. He was more of an eclectic bohemian variety, and he actually got along with a lot of those same type people, which some of them were straight. And in truth, his first band that he created, which was RuPaul and the Unhauls, which is such a funny title. I guess they appeared on like as a band on some public access channel called the American Music Show, and were a pretty big hit for a while. And he said that's actually where he found his people. He was on the show for like 8 years. That's pretty impressive. But he moved to Atlanta because he said that, you know, in this world, that progressiveness, you know, Atlanta was the place to be where you were black. And it still is a big mecca today for black individuals. So it's definitely nice to live in an area where your limitation does not have to do with your skin color. Now, as much as he loved Atlanta, he moved to New York because he realized that's where he can be himself and be successful. And he started out poor there, like couch surfing, staying on park benches with friends, things like that. It was a very cruel, unforgiving environment. You know, New York can be very cutthroat. Now, he did feel that he wasn't really progressing in New York and wasn't making a lot of money. So ultimately, he wound up going back to California and was staying with his mom. And that's when he got the idea of doing drag after watching a Sheena Easton performance. Because up until this point, you know, he had a little funky style or whatnot, but it wasn't like drag, right? And he was watching the Sheena Easton performance and was like, I should recreate myself into this high femme glamazon, because, you know, people had been telling him he had great legs or whatnot. And that is what propelled him to go back to New York and reinvent himself, which ultimately became RuPaul that we know, which RuPaul is his real name, by the way. He said that he is motivated by creativity and surrounds himself with it. So I thought that was pretty interesting because, you know, if you're an artist, which I think drag is definitely an artistry to it, you know, it's that overt embodiment of what people believe female is. Now you can agree with it or not, but I find it very, very impressive. Now, when he went back to New York, you know, he started doing this thing and making a name for himself. And then he met this little cutie patootie. He was like, I think like 12 years younger than him. His name is George. And, you know, they're partying, doing their thing, you know. And RuPaul has always felt like he wasn't worthy of love due to, you know, of course, daddy issues. So, you know, that came out into play at some point in all of his relationships. But ultimately with George, it ended with, you know, George had an addiction problem. And I thought it was very interesting, right? Because when George said, hey, I'm addicted to meth, he got him into rehab, right? Oh, was it heroin? Anyway, he was addicted to one of those substances, right? Them narcotics. And he checked him into rehab. But now George is a designer and was designing RuPaul's apartment. And when he went there, he was like, this place looks like someone on meth designed it. It was a mess. Now, what I thought is interesting is that, okay, if you Google RuPaul, you know that he got married to this guy named George, right? They were together like 23 years. However, this book does not talk about that. It just says that, hey, they weren't together and once the guy went to rehab, but he was reconsidering getting back with him. So I think you have some gaps in there. I just wish there was a little bit more transparency in this book. Considering it is a newer book, why not add that in? Same thing with, you know, the drag race and all that stuff. So I think he was very vulnerable in things about his family life, but not necessarily in other aspects that we all know, like that behind the scenes type thing. But I do think it's beautiful he said that George helped him restore his faith and love. I mean, because don't we all want that for ourselves? Somebody that truly loves us for who we are and for us to really believe that. So I'm happy that he found that. But in the midst of all that George stuff, he also realized he had a problem because, you know, back in the day in the club scene, everybody does drugs. And he said that. He said, you don't really think about addictions. You just go out, you go partying, you do a lot of wild things, and you do a lot of coke. No big deal. That's norm. But when he started getting successful, he had to start establishing, you know, those little boundaries for himself. Hey, I can't get wasted every night, okay? And then he realized he needed to clean up his act. So with success comes responsibilities, and within that responsibilities, you can also find fun. Now, in this book, he didn't name drop celebrities like a lot of other people do. However, he did say that Madonna was a nasty little person, so I took that to heart. I could believe it. I like how he said drag actually made him feel more masculine because drag is about power. It pokes fun at all these societal norms, and I really love that. And lastly, one of the things that I always resonate with RuPaul is the spreading of love and kindness. And I like how this book does that. And I like how his personality has always done that with flair. And that's a beautiful thing. So RuPaul, congratulations. You deserve every award, including that Hollywood Walk of Fame star, okay? I see you, boy. Okay, y'all, let me get out of here. Let me know if you have read this memoir or if there's any other memoirs that are out there that you think are interesting, okay? Sashay away. Bye, y'all.